As this happens, as we're learning this news, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is in the region. He's in Thailand today, also Malaysia, coming off an international summit in Manila, the Philippines, just to address really very much this issue. He's been speaking with international counterparts as part of what the State Department has been calling a pressure campaign to try to diplomatically and economically isolate North Korea, to try to force North Korea to give up its nuclear weapons program, to surrender its ICBM and ballistic missile program. It was a large milestone this weekend when the United Nations Security Council passed a resolution increasing sanctions. Noteworthy because China and Russia signed on to those increased sanctions. That's something that the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, has spoken about. Why it's so important that China gets on board with efforts like this. China is North Korea's most significant ally. 90% of North Korea's trade is credited to China. And the question now moving forward on this is whether China will follow through and actually implement these sanctions. A senior State Department official says that the list of things that China could be doing is still much larger than the list of things China has done on this front to confront North Korea. So this is all part of what the Secretary of State is doing in Southeast Asia right now, trying to get U.S. allies and U.S. adversaries to come on board and really cut North Korea off from the international finance system, from the world economy, and get them to change behavior. Officials are also saying that the case that they're making to China is, look, North Korea is destabilizing the entire region here, and in the end, in the long run, what China wants out of all this is a stability on the Korean Peninsula to ensure that it can continue to grow economically and become more of a regional and world power. So all of these things are coming together now as the Secretary of State continues to travel the region, continues to tell different governments and his counterparts, look, if you have trade with North Korea, if you have diplomatic relations with North Korea, it's time you cut that out. Made the same case in Thailand earlier today. That's a country where North Korea has an embassy. That's a country that the State Department says has very lax visa rules, allowing North Korean officials to go in and set up shell companies there. So all of that playing in to the diplomacy that Secretary of State Rex Tillerson is overseas conducting right now. John?
As ominous as this news is, and as concerned as we are in the United States, obviously, it is even more concerning for the immediate neighborhood. Places like South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, they must be absolutely apoplectic, and I can only imagine that there is furious effort underway between the diplomats of those countries and the U.S. to try to come up with some resolution here.
Absolutely, and that's also part of the case that the United States is making here, is that as North Korea continues to develop its weapons programs, continues its missile programs, the case that you can make to China here is that these other nations in your backyard, South Korea, Japan, may start to seek their own weaponization to defend themselves. You've seen some changes in attitudes in the new regime in South Korea when it comes to missile defense programs. That's something the U.S. has been pushing hard for these countries to begin to give a larger defense posture on their own. But in the end, what the U.S. seeks to stop here is this arms race in the region, and certainly a case can be made to China that they don't want to see an arms race in their own backyard among their adversaries just to counter what North Korea is doing.
Rich Edson at the State Department for us. Rich, thank you.